Okay, Mariella Jones, board member from Poland.
Lionel Furlan Jr., Budget Committee, Poland.
Bernice Frazier, committee. Bonnie Payette, Budget Committee, Mechanic Falls.
Jen Bonig, RSU 16 board and Mechanic Falls resident.
Wendy Ritchie, Finance Coordinator.
Kim Brandt, Assistant Superintendent.
Tina Meserve, superintendent.
Mary Martin, board chair. And I'm going to also review kind of our budget process because we have some people with us that haven't been here before. Our committee was established by the school committee with support from our town leaders. And as you heard from the introductions, it's a mix of school committee administrators and municipal representatives. And our goal is to build a strategic budget that meets the needs of the district and is sensitive to the economic realities of our three towns. And we want a budget that maintains and supports current programs and facilities, is sensitive to the economic times that we are in, and works towards the promises of our strategic plan. So what's happened so far to address our budget goals is it really began for administrators months ago, in that the school administrators and department heads developed an initial proposal, and then through a collaborative process with the superintendent and assistant superintendent, those requests were trimmed and then presented to this committee in a day-long meeting, and also we've had 2 evening meetings. And each school or department has presented a maintenance of effort budget, which includes the cost to continue with our current programs and operations, and also identified some priority items which they deem necessary to meet the needs of students and also the goals and timelines in our strategic plan. So these high priority items were added to a list, which later our assistant superintendent, Kim Brandt, will review for us. And so kind of our next steps. So our next steps this evening is that we will attach a cost to each of those items, and we will discuss them in some more detail, and we'll also talk about the tax impact of each of those priority items. And at the end of this meeting, we need to develop a recommendation for the RSU 16 board that includes a budget proposal. And even though the law is really clear that the RSU 16 school board has the responsibility for establishing the budget for the upcoming year, and then to present that budget to citizens for approval, the will of this group will advise and really guide that decision. And last year, the recommendation from the budget committee was basically the proposal that went to taxpayers for referendum. The only changes last year were an increase in CIP, which was the result of feedback at our community meetings, at the informational meetings, and then some reductions as a result of some revenue increases that we had last year. So following tonight's meeting, the RSU School Board will review what we send to them, the proposed draft of the FY16 budget, which will be developed by this committee. And we'll look at that on April 13th, and then what we'll approve then is only the proposal for presentation at the informational meetings. And those informational meetings will be held in each of the towns on April 28th at Elm Street in Mechanic Falls, on the 29th at PCS here in Poland, and on the 30th at the Minot School. And the school board will then look at the recommendations or any feedback from those informational meetings and any revenue updates that we have, and then we'll vote on a final budget on May 11th to bring to the towns at the district meeting, which is on May 21st. And then that will be followed by the referendum vote on June 2nd. So we're kind of in the middle of that process, but at a really important place tonight. So our task tonight is important to the students in RSU 16 and our 3 communities. And Tina and I will kind of work together to keep our meeting focused, to encourage participation from all committee members, but we'd also like to be done by 8 o'clock, so we are going to try to adhere to the agenda, which I'll go over in a minute, and move things along if we need to. So the first thing on our agenda, which I just did, was kind of review the process and the next steps. And then Tina will look at a couple of things. She's going to look at maintenance of effort budget and address some of that, and also give a revenue review. Kim is going to address the priority list, and Tina will address the budget impact of that, and then we'll move on to see if we can come up with a recommendation. So I'll turn that to Tina.
Thank you. There's a couple of things that I want to start with first. There were some questions at the last meeting that we had about salary comparisons and our benefits. So I did review what the average state salaries are and also benefits, and I thought you might like to see how we compare with other school departments in the state. This chart came out just in March, just recently, from Main Street Management Association, Labor Relations. And as you can see, if you'll look through this chart, it basically sets up what the state average is for an average base salary. That would be your new teachers, no experience. With a bachelor's degree, you can see that the state average is $32,615. Our base is $31,500, so we're just a little bit over $1,000 less than the average. Next column you can see is our master's degree, but a beginning teacher, no experience. The state average is $35,000. Our base is $32,500, so we're $2,500 under the state average. We do not give any increases beyond the master's degree, so the next places where you see the biggest difference in our contract with what other school departments may give. The state average for a master's plus 30 or CAS is $40,000, and we give $32,500, so it's a little over $7,600 difference. The next section is if it's the top end, you have the most experience in the district. So our average top most experienced teacher with a bachelor's makes, the state makes $55,000, and we have $56,987. You can see that's the only area on the chart that we're actually higher than the state average, and we're $1,900 above the state average. For the same teachers at the top of the scale with a master's degree, the state pays $58,405, and we pay $57,987. So back below the state average by a little over $400. And then again, we do not provide any increases for the master's or CAS for our top teachers, so that again is a $7,887 below what the state average is for that degree. The last part you can see here is our average, the average board contributions for health insurance. The state average is $16,166. RSU's contribution is $11,283. So we are below the state average by close to $5,000 for our contribution. That doesn't mean our benefit package is significantly less than what other schools provide. What that there's a variety of issues that have to be considered when you're doing the average. We have over or close to half of our teachers have a single plan, because we don't allow spouses to be on the plan if they can get health benefits from others. So that's one thing that brings our costs down. And we may have younger teachers who don't have families yet, or staff who may have their children on a spouse's plan. So all kinds of things impact this number, but you can see that we don't provide any additional benefits that other schools don't, and in fact we are quite a bit less than what average school departments pay in salaries, and also what our payout is for benefits. And I know that's come up because we do have salary increases this year, and so I wanted to make sure people knew that what we were saying about teachers being due an increase was based on actual, and that we had done some research on that. The other thing that I wanted to share with you is the last time that we were here, there were questions about food service, and at that time I had made a suggestion that we put $30,000 towards food service. We'd had $20,000 before, and Betty has shared with me that she has plans for a summer program that she thinks is going to bring in additional revenue that will help cover some of the deficit that we have. So I'm going to recommend that we keep that at $20,000, so you won't see that in the increases. And Betty, do you have the answer to those questions about what percent of our students have outstanding balances? Basically, the two questions, Betty, were what percentage of students have outstanding balances, and then what percentage of parents are filling out the paperwork for free and reduced lunch rates. The other question that came up, people asked if students have an outstanding debt, do we require them to have it before they can march? And the answer to that is yes. And Carrie's here. I think that's correct information. I heard that.
I've been mailing to senior parents all year long, outstanding debts have to be paid, so.
Yeah. So we do have a way, once they become a senior, to get that money back unless the student is choosing not to march because they have an outstanding
And
balance.
this kind of shows you that. The percentage of debt, first of all, the outstanding debt's $53,929. 70% of that debt belongs to paid students. And then there's some breakdowns here of the free and reduced eligibility for each school and the amount of students that applied, or families that applied for their children, and the amount that were denied. So 43% of the folks of that 70% did not apply. And of those, 10% of those have been denied.
So Betty, when you say paid, obviously free lunch kids would not owe any money. Are the other percent the reduced, the other 30% kids, students who get reduced?
Outstanding debt, unpaid meal charges, and the 70% may be free and reduced. Maybe they were paid at one time. This has been a rollover for a few years, so they may now be free or were at a paid status previously. When I was glancing at all of those, I would say honestly about 20% of them were debt that they acquired when they were paid and then became free. So your biggest percentage of your debt is from your paid families that don't qualify. It's just hard. Mm-hmm. It's really hard for the families to take care of it once it builds up. I did some breakdowns of people owing more than $15 because that's the policy that we've adopted. And out of that $15, $41,000 out of the 53 was $15 and above. The next breakdown underneath that is people owing more than $50, which I think is a really hard place for someone to try and get away from. And of that $50, the beginning of this year we had $32,000 that was owed outstanding from those folks. And now, on March 25th, it was $38,000. So it averages $10,000 a year for unpaid meal charges.
So do you know what percentage of students, like how many kids are $50 or more? Were you able to?
I didn't do the percentage, but the amount was $32,000.
No, but do you know how many students that is? That was, I think, the question.
How many students? No,
Okay.
right off the top of my head. I can try to find that data for you.
That's okay. Thank you.
And the pay down it's very hard for the folks. I mean, it's a real struggle. As you go across this and see Bruce Whittier, what the debt was at the beginning of the year, what it is to now, March 25th, they've actually acquired no more new debt, but they've been able to pay down $2,700. So that one, because they were receiving free meals through Provision 2, it made it easier for those folks to bring that debt down. Elm Street, you'll see there was a slight increase in debt there, even though they're receiving those, but those are mostly milk charges. Those are families wanting their kiddos to have the milk. It's not the meals. And the percent of participation for breakfast and for lunch runs 85% for breakfast for Bruce Whittier and 77% for lunch. The need's there. It's showing you the needs there. Because when you go down further here, Elm Street's slightly less, 78% for their breakfast, 72% for lunch, and then you jump down to mine, it has 16% for breakfast and 51% for lunch, and those are much smaller. But it just is, when you start looking at all these debts across, it shows you that the need's really there. They're going to take advantage of it when we offer the programs. If I wasn't offering a program with a provision too, you'd still see that debt rise. And we wouldn't be able to get it through any other federal reimbursement.
Thank you. That's a lot of information. Thank you for taking that time.
So those were the two areas that we had questions the last time that I wanted to cover before we started with just an overview for you. So I have a sheet here that I'm going to be talking to. Thought you might want to have a copy of it in front of you. No, it's one, but I have my own copy. So is that on? Yes. Just one page.
Here you go.
I think it makes sense for me to pass this one out at the same time. I'm going to start here. So one of the other questions that came up last time is when you include everything in, what is the total overall increase? And people have been floating numbers, 1.2 million. I had a phone call from a town selectman who said, I hear it's over 2 million. So those numbers aren't accurate. And that's why last time when I was being asked what the bottom line is, I said I need to go look at the actual figures. One of the challenges when we're talking about what the increase is that it's not just what each item is costing. Some of our items went down while other items are coming in and going up. And also our revenues change. So is different this year than last year. So I'm going to start from the top of this sheet and kind of work down through with you what our actual increase is so that you have a clearer understanding of that. And again, Mary talked a little bit about our goals here, but I think it always helps to review that. So to maintain our current programs, that's what we're talking about with our MOE, our maintenance of effort. Of course, being sensitive to our economic realities, that's what's going to drive our decision-making tonight. And then working towards the promises of our strategic plan, that's what you're going to see in our priority items. So everything that you see in our priority items are listed in the strategic plan that our communities, our staff, our board have identified as items they want for our school going forward and we feel are essential to be providing a great education for our students. So the first thing that I think is important is to talk about our maintenance of effort. Our current budget this year is $19,950,000. And again, our administrators, our directors have reviewed all the budgets with you folks, and they've explained any increases and also any decreases, any significant increases or decreases. One of the things that has happened since our last meeting is Mary and Kim and I got together earlier in the week, and Mary asked us to really look at our maintenance of effort to see if there's any place that we could find additional savings. Partly because we think those priority items are so important. And she admitted as she looked through our maintenance of effort, she didn't see any place we could reduce, but she asked us to try. So I went back to the administrative team. I asked Carrie to find some money at the high school. I asked Linda to find some in technology. Rick Benoit took some tuition money out, and Gary took some more facilities money out. We're really nervous about that because we are bare bones, and what that means is if there's anything unexpected, there's absolutely no savings. We are down to what we know we're going to have for bills and nothing extra. But by doing that, we did reduce our bottom line between 15 and 20,000, I believe, Wendy, and that's not a lot, but it's something. And so if you just look in general terms, the increase in our maintenance of effort budget is $595,000. The total increase to the towns is $376, $376,000. And as I go through the process, I will talk to you a little bit about how you can kind of use this document with our budget and compare it to these numbers and figure that all out. We had salary increases that we've talked about at $310,000. We are anticipating our insurance increase at 5%. That would be an increase of $130,000. Those numbers are supposed to come out next week. They said the week of March 30th. So very soon we will know whether that 130 is reality. The information we did get since the last meeting is that the maximum insurance increase is 5%. So that's good news for us. It's we've always been on the bottom end of the increases, and if that holds true, the chance that we're at 0, 1, 2% this year is very high. So if that's the case, this cost will come out, and that will shift the increase of the budget immediately, and that is what would go forward to the towns when we meet at with the board and also with the town meetings. The 10% budgeted for liability insurance will be with us through this whole budget process because we won't know about the bidding process until the summer comes. Snow plowing costs, of course, have been added for the first time. That is a clear increase of $50,000 for a contract and $10,000 for salary, but I am working with our town managers, so those numbers could be less if we are able to work out something with the towns at cost. Our CIP, which we've been quoting as $160,000, is $160,000, but that's only a $30,000 increase over last year. So when we're ticking up the amount that our increase is, you can't say it's $160,000 for CIP because there was already $130,000 in last year. Our special education out of district placement costs, $134,000, that's a true increase. That's, again, we've been talking about that this year. We had 6 new students come in that were unexpected, and we need to budget for them. We have 2 buses in there that come at a cost of about $40,000, but that also is not an increase in the budget because we have 2 buses that we're getting a subsidy for that are already paid off. So this is a 0 increase to have these 2 buses. And then, of course, our 2 mobile computer labs at $52,000, that is an increase, and you see that represented in the budget. So, trying to see. The next section is the revenues. This is the part that's always the most challenging if you haven't worked with the budget very often. If you look at this sheet that has the full budget in it, the first thing that, if you're looking for the bottom line, of course, is just to turn it over and look at the back. And you see the $595,000, and that's just a little bit under a 3% increase. But I'm going to talk to you about the revenues. So on the front, the revenues. You can see the first part is the local revenues. The required local share, this is the amount that the state requires you to raise for us to get the state share. You can see that's gone up 4%, and that's based on a perceived need. So based on our free and reduced lunch rate and our staffing needs and all of those things, the state is saying that we need to raise $320,000 more dollars than we have in the past at the local level. We are above the minimum standard, so the additional local funds is also going up. That increase with our maintenance of effort budget would be $120,000 on top of that. And you can see the total there is $441,000. Now, that's a little bit deceptive because this doesn't include the warrant articles for the feasibility study and the CIP. So we are actually not putting the $95,000 in the CIP this year. In the feasibility money. So in the end, it's actually only going to be I'm trying to see if I got the right sheet here. So I think it's $384,000. total town increase is 376. So when you look at this, when I say total town increase is 376, but you see this 441, you see where I'm talking? The reason there's a difference there is because we're not putting money into the feasibility study. That was 95, but we put more into CIP, which was 30,000, so the difference there is $65,000. It's actually 65 lower than that, 65,000 lower. And you'll see that when I actually give you the local share sheet from the state as well. So again, the total increase to towns is $376,000. The next section is the state revenues. You can see the state has given us $145,000 more dollars. Now, depending on what happens with the governor's budget, he shifted a lot to the local taxpayers through property taxes. If that budget doesn't go through, more of that 376 will go back to the state, and there will be less in the local. And that's good news for us. There is quite a bit of momentum towards there being less increase at the town level. So I feel really positive that these numbers are worst case scenario, and our final impact on towns will be quite a bit less than that. And then in other revenue, you can see we only have about $750,000 increase in the other revenue. And in fact, most of our other revenue is a decrease. We are getting less in public tuition for both public secondary students and also our special ed. And again, that comes into factor when we had Raymond students who were tuitioning in, and we have fewer of those tuition students now. What we have done is increased our fund balance. When I met with Mary, we talked about whether we could go up and how much we are contributing from the fund balance. We contributed last year at 275, Wendy. Our initial proposal was to put 300,000 in there, and we've discussed it, and we think we can do 325, and it will still be about only half of our fund balance. So we feel comfortable that that is a reasonable number, and we'll be able to support that and sustain that into the future. Any questions about revenues?
No, yeah, I'm a little lost here. Into the towns here.
Yes.
Each town, the total of the 3 towns is $376,000.
Yes. And I have another sheet that will help clarify that more. So you'll see just the Minot contribution if you're interested. I just wanted to go through this and not have you referring to too many sheets first, so that will come next.
Okay.
And I think the only thing that I would add is that I think that we really have done it on worst case scenario in terms of revenue, that the money that's here is at least the money that we can count on. What we're hopeful is that it will be more than that, but we can't count on that. So what Tina has based this on is sort of worst case scenario. These are revenues that we know are coming to us.
And that leads me into this next section on your sheet. A nice segue, Mary. If the unknowns, of course, are our health insurance. We're going to know that next week, hopefully, if they are on time with their reports. The next piece of this is the retirement funds. If you've been following what's happening at the legislature, there is big support for one of the pieces of legislation, which is properly funding the teacher retirement system. So the state has a teacher retirement system, and a few years ago they shifted some of the costs of that back to the schools. And that has caused a lot of frustration at the town level because it is a state retirement system. And the House voted this week overwhelmingly to support the shift back to the state where it was always intended to be. And they had enough votes to override a governor's veto if that occurred. So now they're waiting for it to go through the next step of the process. Now, we get about $307,000 in state subsidy to go towards that cost, but of course the town is picking up a decent share of that. So it won't be a dollar for dollar savings. We're not going to have a windfall of $307,000 if this goes through, but it should be a positive impact on the local section of the expenditures. And so again, we're waiting for that to be determined, and it is supposed to be go right into effect to impact next year. So that's a big unknown for us. The
When
other,
they did change that, when they initiated that change, the schools are responsible for funding. They did up our subsidy for that.
Yes,
The
300
revenue came in for what you had
Yes.
to give back.
yeah, so what
So
they
we have to be
did,
careful to say that they shifted it, but they did give us
Yes.
some money up front to shift that.
Yeah.
It was just a wash on how they accounted for it.
actually, that's not true,
Okay.
because what happened is, at that time, it was 237,000. Right now, it's 307. But so they shifted 237,000 into our subsidy, which this town has to pay 55% of that, or 50% of that, and the town's only given us the state's only given us the other half, or less than half. They're paying about 46%. So really, it's in the subsidy, but the town's paying for over half of it. Does that make sense? It's not, they're not giving us, the state's not giving us $307,000. You have to pay for half of that as a town. So they're not giving you the total cost, they're giving you subsidy, which then they're telling the town they have to pay their portion of. That's why I'm saying it wouldn't be a one-to-one savings if it comes out, but it would certainly impact the locals, because the state would be doing the contribution towards retirement. It wouldn't be in our subsidy at all. So we would lose the $307,000 subsidy, but that portion that the town pays, we wouldn't be paying, the state would be paying it. So it's, again, that's why this is so confusing, and when people are ticking off the numbers, you have to really see what happens when you put it in the formula to really make sense of it all. And then, of course, the approval of the governor's budget. He has appropriated about $900 million towards general purpose aid, and there is a proposal in the legislature to increase that funding. The Republicans are recommending a $25 million increase in general purpose aid to education. The Democrats are at $51 million. The Democrats want the $51 million because it would keep the mill rate even with this year if they increase by $51 million. So there's a good chance there'll be some increase to general purpose aid, which would increase our subsidy, but we're waiting to find out. We don't know how much it will be, or what that impact will be on the percentages. And then again, the tax proposal, which has shifted a bigger portion back to the towns this year, and why you see the $320,000 increase to the required local share is because more has been shifted to the town this year. So a lot of unknowns, and we're trying to build a budget on an revenue stream that is totally up in the air and will be for a while longer. So we do the best we can, and like Mary said, our task right now is to go with what we know, knowing that if our revenue stream changes significantly, it will help our tax burden a lot, and it may help us also put back some of the items that we've taken out to the bare bone that are going to be really challenging for the school district. So I think it would be helpful for me to give this next document out first. There are several scenarios in this sheet. I'm only going to talk about the first one first, and then as Kim goes through the priority list, she will share a priority list, and then we'll look at what the scenario would look like if we got that priority list. Where is it? There's the Xerox copies of the priority list. We don't have it. That sounds great, thank you. We're looking for, you guys don't have a sheet with the priority list, do you?
No.
At least
Pass that out.
the priority list?
Yeah.
So we don't have that, we need that?
We have
All right.
Thank you. Does anybody have them, a sheet that says priority list? Sure, thank
They're all
you.
at the end of the table, so I thought they had been passed
Yeah,
out.
so Carrie will make copies and we'll.
I know how to use a copier.
I was like,
I don't
Is there
know.
anything else?
Maybe they were
before-
there.
I think
Maybe
we're
so.
good.
I think we're all set.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
While they make a copy?
So this is being sent out, right?
That's what she just handed
You
out.
guys have all that?
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
just want to make
Yeah,
sure
we
this is for the people.
follow along.
Oh,
All right,
perfect,
you ready?
thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Well,
I have one.
Maybe we
so
can.
thank you.
We're good now. All right.
So if you'll look at the first sheet, actually, look at this side that has local, that says MOE at the top, and has a local share. So that's what we just talked about, the revenue source. If you flip that up, on the back side of this first sheet, you will see the impact of the MOU budget on taxes. So remember when I told you that the tax should,
So we're just gonna look at this side. So the back side of the one that, this MOE, and then you
Yeah.
flip it up.
Yeah.
It's this one here.
so we talked about the revenue. Remember we said 440, if you look,
Oh, yours is
if you look at this section here, I'll just bring you back to what we just talked about. In the very first line, the local revenue, it said 441,000. Remember when I told you that that's minus the feasibility study and I could probably project this if I needed to. Have people follow along. Do you think that would be easier? I'll give you just a moment to look at this,
But
but
I don't know if they're going to be able to see it anyway.
Oh, they
The
probably
numbers
would.
are probably
Yeah.
too small.
if you look about 3/4 of the way down the page where it says local cost share, and it has a little highlighted 376,383, that's your town, the total town cost. And again, you can see over to the side, it explains the general fund is the 441 that we talked about, minus the 95,000 feasibility, plus the 30,000 increase in CIP. So that's the total costs, including the other the warrant articles. And if you look below that, what everybody wants to know is what does that mean for an annual change? Mechanic Falls, it would be $27.57 a year on a $100,000 house, 35 in Minot, and 35 in Poland.
And adult ed is included in this.
Yes, that has the adult ed is 70,000 and capital improvement is 160. So that includes, and that's no change over last year. That's what we
Sure,
had
that's
in
what
there.
we
So
had
it's
last year.
everything that would be on the warrant based on just
Yes.
maintenance of effort?
Yes, everything that would be on the warrant based on maintenance of effort is in here. There will be no, if that went through, this is exactly what would we would be seeing.
Okay.
So, any questions on this for maintenance of effort? How am I doing? It's complicated.
a lot of numbers.
It's complicated, and that's why, you know, like I said, when people were passing numbers around, you sometimes have to put people off and say, you got to wait till you see what it looks like, because the formulas and the revenues and all of those things make a difference on the bottom line. So I'm going to turn it over to Kim, and she's going to talk to you about priority items. And then after she finishes the first round of priority items, I will refer you to the next sheet, which will tell you what the impact on taxes would be if we had our MOE plus our number one priority items on the first part of that list.
Okay, thank you, Tina. All right, so the priority list that you have in front of you represents, as Mary said in the beginning, months of work with our administrative team. And we went through the budgets line by line and identified what is it that we absolutely cannot live without. What are the things that will be new requests above the maintenance of effort that we can't do without at all. And so after a lot of basically hair splitting and a lot of hard work and a lot of trying to decide what we could give up and what we couldn't, we came up with this list. Knowing that we want good feedback from this budget committee, we also took this list of all the things that we feel that we can't live without, and we divided this into 3 tiers as well, so that you can see what our absolute top, please, 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 there's no way we can do without these things, only 2 pleases on the second, and maybe 1 please on the third column. So none of this is fluff, and we all, as an administrative team, feel that we need all of these things on this priority list. The first thing I think we're going to talk about, Mary, I think you're going to start, but I wondered if you wanted me to pass out this description.
Sure.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So Mary's actually going to talk about our number one priority item first, and then I'm going to follow her with some of the other things.
Yeah, and we talked about the business manager at our last meeting, and I would just remind you about the information that we got that was regional information in terms of other central offices and the support within them, and the fact that there was a presence of a business manager within those offices, both regionally and those school districts that had a comparable number of students. And last year, when we were at this point and we were trying to make really important decisions about what priorities we felt we could address, we really came back to our students and what was best for our students. And I know some people might think that, a business manager that's outside of a school is less important. When I look at this priority list, I think a business manager is going to make more difference for our students than any other item on that list, because what it will allow is it will allow our superintendent and our assistant superintendent to be educational leaders. And not that they're not now, it's just when you look, Kim will address this later, but there are lots of things that are taking their time and their focus away from that. It will give them more time to work with administrators and teachers. It will give them more time to be in our schools. And there are also some pretty significant statewide initiatives that are going to require great educational leadership and lots of attention. And some of those are the proficiency-based diploma. And you might think of that as a high school initiative, of which that's where it starts, but it's going to, in the years ahead, require not just a high school focus for that. And our evaluation process for both our teachers and administrators, and both of those are mandated initiatives. They're not things that we have just chosen to do. Those are important things we need to do and need to do them by law. And those are going to require strong educational leadership. So without a business manager, it's going to be tough for us to move forward. I think we're going to be looking at status quo, and it's really a capacity issue in terms of our central office staff. And currently, we have a strong administrative staff in our central office, and it will allow them to do the things that they do best. And the other thing is that we do have some pretty significant facility needs ahead of us, and those will require the expertise of a business manager to help sort some of those things through. So those are just things that I feel strongly about, and I wanted to remind you about the discussions we had last week. And what we asked Kim to do, and Tina, is to kind of look at what are some of the things that a business manager would do that they are currently doing. And do you want to address that?
Sure. So basically, a business manager oversees systems in a school district. Systems like facilities, including custodial work and maintenance work. Things like looking at our buildings that were built in the 1950s and making sure we're on track with our CIP and building that CIP out. Things like food service, oversight of the finances there and the daily operations. Things like oversight of transportation and preventative maintenance and making sure that we're passing our inspections so that our transportation is safe for all of our students. And then budget oversight in terms of the central office financial, the daily running of things, making sure our invoices are paid on time, making sure we're getting things in and out as need be. So a business manager normally does all those things. Right now, Tina and I are doing those things. For example, I have spent days on bidding out our liability insurance, and I'm just beginning that process. So that's the kind of, I'm happy to do it, and I'm doing a lot of learning, but it's not the most efficient way to run a school district, because a business manager is trained how to do these things and knows how to do them well, versus us learning and then taking the time to go ahead and do those ourselves. So these things that a business manager does, they're extremely important. We have to do these things to make sure we are aligned with state law and what the state demands of us, and to make sure that our buildings and our transportation systems, our food service systems are running well, and that things are safe for our students and our staff. Also, the management of human resources, things like Family Medical Leave Act, things like workman's compensation. All of those things right now are things that are taking a lot of Tina's time. So these are small, detail-oriented things that are very important, but they're not the kind of things that normally superintendents spend their time on. If you look on the back page, I tried to make this as succinct as possible, but this is what superintendents and assistant superintendents normally do in a school district. We're busy with the visioning and the planning. We're busy making sure the strategic plan, we're moving towards those goals. We're making sure that students have optimal learning situations. We're supporting our staff. We're making sure that our staff is learning through professional development, that our curriculum is aligned with state standards, that we're making sure that we're moving forward, as the board has asked us to do, again, with our strategic plan. It's also important things like parent communication and student issues that arise. Those are hugely important, and our building principals do an outstanding job with that work. Sometimes that needs to come to the central office level, and it's really important that we have the time to do that work very, very well. Also, presence in schools, and that's something that Tina and I both, we have high standards for our district and high standards for ourselves, and we are not able to be in the schools working as much with the professional development curriculum as we want to, because we are doing the other things that a business manager is trained to do and would be doing. As Mary said, when our board committee looked at surrounding districts, all of them have a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, and or a curriculum director, a business manager, and most also have a facilities and grounds director. So basically, Tina and I are doing the job that is normally done by 3 people, and please don't hear this as a complaint, because we love this district and we are happy to be here, and we feel like we're doing great things. Please hear it instead is that as we are doing that work instead of the passionate educational student learning work that normally superintendents and assistant superintendents do, and that will take our students to the next level in learning. And so that's really why this is our #1 priority here. So if we really want to move towards a strategic plan, we have to do that, because we're doing that, but it feels glacially slow to us, and we're not doing it at the level we know we can and that we want to. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, well done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, absolutely. All right, I also want to reiterate what Mary and Tina have both said, that everything on this priority list is aligned with the strategic plan. All of these are related to the goals in that strategic plan. And Mary also mentioned that we have some huge state mandates with us right now. You've heard us talk about response to intervention, which requires that we put in supports in place for any students who are not achieving academically and or behaviorally. It also, we have the new teacher evaluation system, we have the new principal evaluation system, and of course the proficiency-based, you might hear proficiency-based diploma, but again, it's really about a proficiency-based education system. Because what it means is you don't start in 9th grade with that. You start in pre-K with that. And so we have to take a look pre-K through 12 at our work, at the standards, at the curriculum, and make sure we have what we need to have in place to make sure that our students will be able to reach get their proficiency-based diploma. So, first one on the list is our business manager. The second one is a guidance counselor. This position would be half-time at Elm Street School and half-time at Minot Consolidated School. We don't currently have a guidance counselor at either of those 2 elementary schools. We do have one at PCS. And a guidance counselor, I don't know how much people know about a guidance counselor, but a guidance counselor is really part of the educational system. Guidance counselor is there to work with students and teachers and families to make sure that students are doing as well as they can academically, as well as socially and emotionally. It's not an extra or fluff. It's something that we need to make sure our students are achieving at the levels they need to. It's also the next step in response to intervention. Last year we came before the committee and said we've got to get started with RTI. We were asking you to support us with a dean at the middle school, which you did, and with a behavioral interventionist to help teachers learn how to deal with students who are having behavioral struggles and not meeting expectations. That is the start to our work towards RTI, and that's going extremely well. This is our next step, is having a guidance counselor.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So the guidance counselor, you said it's half-time, and so you're saying like 3 days a week?
Half-time at each of those schools.
So it's a full-time position?
One full-time position. Yes.
For $17,000?
Yes. Do you want to explain?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to explain that.
Wow, you're good.
So, we're going to take just a break and make sure that we have the handout.
Come up and join us. We'll find you some handouts. We're working on it.
Are there?
I've got this.
Yeah, I've got an extra of these. This will be important, and then the budget will be important for her.
If you want to sit next to me, because it might take a bit to catch up. This is what you. Thank you. But we're going down through the priorities. What's the impact of that? Now we're going through these priorities.
And that's something I handed out earlier. You can look at that at your convenience. Okay. Before you go, we'll make sure you have anything else that you missed. So, thank you. So, when we first talked about the guidance counselor, a teaching position is about $50,000. When you consider, you usually get somebody, 5 or 10 years of experience, and then they usually take benefits. And that usually, we average that out to say, we don't know if we're going to get someone at first year and it's going to cost less than that, or if we're going to get someone at the top of the scale with lots of experience, it's going to cost more than that. But typically, that's adequate. So right now, we have 3 part-time social workers between Elm Street and Minot Consolidated School. They're all 3/5 of a position, so they work 3 out of 5 days. And so we basically have 1.8 people in those 3 positions. What we're doing next year is our goal is to have a half-time social worker at each school and a half-time guidance counselor at each school. So we have one of our social workers as contracted services. They're not one of our employees. We won't be having that contract next year. And then the other 2 positions, instead of being 3 days, will be 2.5 days. So they'll lose a half a day. They work with the district, but then they also work outside of the district for other parts of their week. So what this means is, once we actually looked at the numbers and figured out how much was allocated for that 1.8 position, there was only $17,000 left that will be an actual increase, because we're only going to 2 positions. So the contract is going away, and the guidance people will be focusing on other things for the general population of students, either some specific curriculum, group work, like might have some group sessions for grieving students, or other things like that. So that's why the cost wasn't $50,000 once we took out the contracted service numbers that we had in the general budget. So it's just making sure we weren't double dipping on that. We're leaving something in the budget that we knew we weren't going to fill.
So it's one guidance, one social worker shared between Minot and Elm Street.
Yes.
Got it.
And Poland has, twice the students, so they have a full-time guidance counselor there. And so this will be about equivalent services, which is also part of our strategic plan, is to make sure we have provide equal services for our students. So to have one school with a guidance counselor and no guidance services at the other school was part of the reason we made this number 2 on our priority list. Kim?
Okay. So 17 really is correct, Tina.
Yes.
Okay. So next thing on our top tier is the math curriculum 4-6. In 2012, Maine adopted new math standards. You've probably heard them, Common Core State Standards for Math. That was in 2012, right, 3 years ago. We are still currently using a 2007 version of everyday math. It is not aligned to those state standards that were adopted in 2012. So we're a bit behind in our math curriculum here. So we really need to think about the fact that teaching is both a science and an art, and the science is making sure that we are implementing research-based practices and research-based curriculum that's aligned to the current standards. The art part of that, of course, is connecting with students, figuring out how each one learns well, and making sure we're meeting those needs. We have a choice. We can either get a new math program. The work has already been done by very good people who have aligned that curriculum already to the state standards that we have. Or we can spend time trying to go through our 2007 version and figuring out where it aligns and where it doesn't, and then trying to patch things together. That's not a good use of teachers' time. We want them implementing research-based aligned curriculum, not trying to patch it together. Because you can imagine what that might look like at each grade level as we're trying to patch. It would take a ton of time, and it would not be what's best for our students. So we are asking for support in a new math curriculum. You'll notice that this one says grades 4 through 6, and you'll notice 2 down, you'll see K through 3. So I'll talk about that in a minute. But that math curriculum is pretty imperative, and if you talk to, I think, any of our elementary math teachers, you will hear them say, we need to move forward in this area. We are way behind when we adopted the standards in 2012.
So is it that the curriculum, like for 4th grade, is $10,000 to get the new curriculum,
Yes.
and then 5th grade is $10,000 and
Yes.
6th grade, which is where you came up with the 30?
Yes,
Okay.
and the other thing too is that in the maintenance of effort budget, we have some money in those math lines already because we needed some updated old materials. That takes into account those costs would not be additional. That's already in there. So this would be what else we'd need in order to get that new program.
We're anticipating around $20,000, and we've gotten some basic quotes, but $20,000 for PCS, and then 10 for Minot and 10 for Elm Street. So a total for that grade level is $40,000, but you see 30 because we had $10,000 already in the budget for their, consumable math pages that they would be purchasing. So again, we've made sure we haven't double dipped here and left the math journals in, and then added on a $40,000 cost.
And what if there's a bill and to stop Common Core, then we lose, you got to go and start all over again.
So there is no effort to stop Common Core in the state. It's been in place for 3 years. The only effort that I've heard is to change the name. They're talking about changing the name to MEA, but there are no standards that they're saying we don't want our children to have to do these and to take them out. They've already adopted the Smarter Balance test, which aligns with the Common Core. So I see no evidence that they have any effort or direction to do it. And I can't remember how many states, but I think it's like 37 have adopted the Common Core. So textbooks are now all aligning with the Common Core because most states have adopted them. So again, it's I don't have fear that's going away.
Do you have a sample of the textbook for math?
We do not. What we will be doing is we will go through I don't know if you want to answer this.
I'll just jump in when you're done. Go ahead.
We will have a process of looking at, there's been a report out about which ones align best with the Common Core. We will look at the ones that best align to the Common Core, and we will go through a process. We're reviewing them and then go through the selection process. So what we there'll be a selection process that will involve teachers across the district. We will be getting advice from math experts at Maine Math Science Alliance and also at the national level to help us with that selection process.
Different versions. I mean, we said this is aligned with a mandated curriculum. But
Yes.
it seems that
There are
there's
lots of different
versions
options.
of these.
Yeah. There's lots of different publishers. So it could be Everyday Math we look at. We might look at New Math. We'll probably look at My Math.
Maybe Eureka Math.
Eureka Math. There'll be a variety of ones based on research of which ones are best aligned, and then we'll make our selection. So this, again, is an estimate about cost, but it's based on what a typical math program costs, and it's our best estimate that we can make.
So the next one on our list is a field hockey coach at the middle school. We currently have about 25 students participating in field hockey and only one coach. So we need to have the second coach, but also because the federal Title IX, you've probably heard about that, it requires that we have equal numbers of equal opportunities and numbers of boys and girls in organized sports, and we are a little out of compliance on that. Not as many girls are participating. So this would also help bring us a little bit closer to compliance with Title IX, is to have that second field hockey coach, which we need for those 25 kids in 7th and 8th grade. And that's $1,500, and it will make a big difference for those students. Next is the math curriculum K-3. We divided it simply because we wanted to tell you that we'd love to have K through 6 math program. That would allow us in all 3 elementary schools all the way through to do that work of learning and implementation, and it would make our professional development pretty seamless in that way, and colleagues from all different grade levels could be working together to see how the learning changes and connects from grade level to grade level. That's the ideal. However, if the committee were to advise us only to go with half of the program because of cost, then we would prefer to start with the upper grades, 4, 5, and 6, and have them align with the middle school and high school, and then go with K-3. If the committee recommends that we do all of it, we'd love all of it. It would make for a very good, an easier implementation across all 3 of our elementary schools with all of our elementary teachers.
So what version of, what are we using for 7 through 12 right now?
Sean's here.
Yeah.
I wonder if Sean can tell us the name of
It's
his.
CMP, isn't it?
I don't. Okay.
It's
Yeah.
Connected Math, Mariella. CMP.
This is Core Plus.
Core Plus.
Okay, and has that changed any in the past?
The high school
8 years?
updated 2 or 3 years ago. It sort of phased in each year over the course of the
Right,
years.
I know that's changed
So that's
some.
been updated.
Okay, and has middle school in the past 8 or 10 years changed?
In the last 8 or 10 years, but it's probably more towards 8. Or
Okay.
10.
Okay,
Not very recent.
okay, all right.
The teachers have been very active building a supplementary library to fill the gaps.
Okay, because the one that was, I think about 8 years ago, was saying that it was 8 years prior to that.
That's correct.
So it's changed since 15 years ago, let's put it that way.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. And then the last one on our top tier is the high school science 9th grade. So it is anticipated that Maine is going to adopt the next generation science standards very soon this coming year. Those standards are, like all of our other standards, more rigorous. Rigor is good. We want to make sure we have the support in place for students to meet those high demands. Our high school science teachers have been all over this. They've been very proactive, and they have looked at the curricular changes, the course offering changes that would need to happen to be in alignment with the next generation science standards. And the money that you see there reflects what would be needed to change the 9th grade curriculum course offerings for students that would be aligned.
And if I can add, that originally was presented to you as $12,000 with $7,000 for this program, but because we are so committed to getting these items, we went back and said, can you do with some less materials to get this program in? And they said, bottom line is if they couldn't get it all, the essential would be the $5,360. So again, that was one of the cuts that's happened recently where we're just really trying to nickel and dime it a little bit maybe, but again, trying to be sensitive to what the overall impact would be on our budget.
At that time, do you want to talk about the...
Yes. So if you'll go back to the document, we looked at the MOE, the first page. Oops, where am I? There we go. The second document that you have says priority 1 at the top. And again, this is priority 1, the one Kim just went through. We said they're all priority 1, and we've just kind of tiered them out. This is the first tier of that. If you look at this, you will see that if you, again, maybe you only care about the bottom line, but this first one, you'll see the comparison of the local revenue would go up to $610,000 above the 441. And remember, you would have to subtract out the feasibility study and add in the CIP. So it would be a difference of, that would be lower by $65,000. If you flip up the page, you go to the exact same place you did before, which is 3/4 of the way down with the highlighted section showing the increase in local impact would be $545,000. Again, the 610 minus the 95 plus the 30, and you would see the difference on the tax, again, would be $47 for Mechanic Falls, $53 for Minot, and $50 for Poland. And this would be on an annual change on a $100,000 home. Again, this is our worst case scenario for the budget, but again, these are the numbers we have to work with right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Tier 2? All right. Okay, so the second tier of our priority item, the first thing listed is the high school science forensics. As Tina said, this is actually connected to the bigger picture at the high school of being aligned with the next generation science standards. But the 9th grade curriculum would be curriculum that all students would take, and they'd have to take, and we want them to take. The forensics class would be an elective. It is it's a hot ticket item. Forensics is something that a lot of students are very excited about the possibility of. So that would cost about $5,000 for those materials. The Coral Risers only $2,700. We have a robust chorus at the high school, 62 students right now, and they've done without those choral risers, but you know what they are, right? They're just so that you're a little bit higher than the person behind you. They have done without them, but they should have them. This is a pretty basic necessity for a chorus, and because we're lucky enough to have a robust chorus, we need the risers. Staff computers at Elm Street, Minot, and also at the high school, those are for our principal's admin assistants whose computers, the computers that they're using, are pretty outdated. And considering the type of work that they need to do and that the principals need them to do and the importance of that work, we really can't have old, outdated computers. So that cost you see there, the $1,800, would be to update those.
How many computers does that represent?
4.
Yeah.
4.
Yes. 4 computers. All right, world language teacher. So we did a little comparison to see how we're doing in our district around instruction in world language with other surrounding districts. And what we found out is that in Great New Gloucester and Lake Region, in Auburn, and also in Oxford Hills, all of those districts offer Spanish, French, and Latin. And Lake Region even offers Greek on top of that. Right now, our district offers Spanish, and it only offers Spanish starting at the high school. So with a new proficiency-based diploma, our students, for the first time ever, are going to have to be proficient in a world language, a second language. So according to state guidelines, that means they're going to have to be intermediate-level communicators in a second language. We need to start that instruction in the middle school level. That's too much to ask of a student who's starting Spanish for the first time in 9th grade. We would like to eventually increase our offerings in world language, but we know that that can't be a top priority at this time. But what we would like to do is we would like to do a really good job with Spanish. That's what we have in place now. We'd like to increase that down into the middle school with an additional Spanish teacher there so we can get students started with that and get them toward meeting the requirement that they're going to meet to get that proficiency-based diploma. And then the .5, the half-time social worker at Poland Regional High School. Right now, can I say his name?
Sure.
Okay. Pat Danboys right now has a caseload of 50 students. That's virtually unheard of. That is huge. It's very, very high. So he does an incredible job, but what ends up happening is he's doing a lot of responding to big emergencies because there's so many students. He's putting out flyers. We have a work-to-school program that has a lot of behavior needs in there, and what we really need is somebody to be able to support social skills learning with those students as well. And again, this is all response to intervention work, all RTI work that you see in our strategic plan. So we're asking for another half-time social worker at the high school who can help with this caseload of this many students and also help with the social skills lessons and learning in that school-to-work program.
And Carrie was sharing with us today that half of the dropouts come from that program. And so, is that correct? Am I remembering what?
Yes.
Who have special education, and then a chunk of those students come from this program.
Right. So part of the goal here is, again, with the strategic plan, that we're meeting the needs of all of our students and particularly decreasing our dropout rate. And so we really feel like this position will help us do both of those things. Can I say one more thing?
Yes, please.
When you asked how many computers that was, it's 4, and I'm remembering the quote being $600 per computer, so my number, it looks like I might have made a mistake there. Because 600 times 4 is not $1,800. So that would either mean we get 3 of them, or that number would change to 2,400. So
and that brings us to the mill rate.
Okay. So if you'll come back to the sheet that we were looking at, you're on the next page. It says priority list. It's priority 1, but it's list number 2 that Kim's gone over. Again, you can see now we've gone from the $441,000 increase in the local revenues to $695,000 from the MOE to to include the next 2 lists. And again, you flip the page up, you're going to see that change would be $630,000, and the impact would be $57 on a $100,000 house in Mechanic Falls, $63 in Minot, and $57 in Poland. everybody see where that is and feel comfortable that they understand? Okay, Kimberly.
Okay, so now we're at the third tier of our top priority items, and only 3 items there. We have a half-time special ed teacher at PCS, and this is because our special ed teachers, generally a doable caseload is 17 to 18 students, because these teachers are also teaching as well. They're not just case managing. And so that's generally what a doable caseload is. 2 of our PCS special ed teachers have caseloads of 23 and 24. So they're a bit over. This half-time special ed teacher would take some of those students onto his or her own caseload to make those other caseloads a little bit more reasonable. We also have another special ed teacher who has a caseload that's very reasonable. That teacher also runs a literacy lab for response to intervention work. She does additional response to intervention work with students.
60, which is quite a high mill rate. So for the purposes of starting the conversation, I would like to say that I believe you could sell this budget to the townspeople if you were to be able to confine your increase to the items that are on the top part of this list. And I nonetheless believe it will be a tough sell on the business manager, but at least the mill rate. You people have been very good at making your cases and dealing with the townspeople. And yes, I still haven't gotten rid of this goal. So for a point of starting from where I'm sitting, I would support this upper level, but to have the mill rate go up much more than 50 cents, 1,000, I think would be a difficult thing. All of these things are going to ultimately have to happen. They are part of your strategic plan, but I guess the question is, do they all have to happen in 1 year?
Yeah.
So that would be my general comment.
Yeah, and the reason we have divided those out is so that you can think about it just the way that you have. Say, this is something that will seem manageable to our taxpayers. So I don't know what other people, do you have a sense of?
In the town of Minot, we're struggling.
Yeah.
There's 12 foreclosures since January. 248 people have not paid their taxes since 2012. And our taxes, the town taxes, are going up this year, 150,000. I can't see putting any more burden on them. I mean, Betty says, people can't afford to feed their kids. Well, they can't afford to feed their kids. They can't afford to pay their taxes. They're going to lose their house. I mean, how much more burden can we put on people? I know that you want this. A lot of things I want, and I can't have it either. And I'm all for education. I have 2 kids, and they all got masters, and and I understand the prices of stuff is going up, and school is not like it was in the 1950s when I went. But like I say, maybe the top part, but the others, the town, I don't think they will go for it. I mean, we fought tooth and nail at the town meeting just to get $30,000 in addition to the firehouse. So it's just gonna be a hard sell.
So would you agree that the first list is something?
I think we should cut off the math curriculum there for K to 3. I don't think that's right now. They can do without, and I don't know. I mean, like I say, the people are hurting, and
okay, so
they're having trouble paying their insurances, and they see that we're paying the teachers' insurances, which is all right, it's in the contract, but I mean, they're making, they can't. I know several people who are paying the penalties this year because they couldn't buy the insurance, they couldn't pay it, and now they're paying the penalty, and they're going to pay some more next year, and it's just going up. And people my age who are on Social Security, we just can't If we go to the highest one here in my house, I'd be paying over $200 more for taxes above last year, and it's just, I have a limit. When I reach that limit, I'm moving because I have to live.
Thank you. That feedback's important. And I know Kathy and Bonnie, I know your process in Mechanic Falls is just starting.
Yeah, we did. And we met last week, and the budget committee met last night. The meeting April 1st again to make any suggestions or whatever. There's not a lot that we can probably do this year with our budget. There are going to be some topics of discussion, but there are going to be some movements forward on the budget committee doing some investigation of a total restructure financially. There's services that we provide, and we've provided them with grant money that is now gone away. And to be able to sustain those costs and the increasing costs of some of those services full-time are really not, as a budget committee, I'm going to speak for them, and we'll discuss it later in next week, but there's going to have to be some restructuring going on.
Now, as you look at what's been presented tonight and the impact, do you have a sense there?
And I agree with Mariella. We've had numerous positions, additional, administratively in the past. And it's changed considerably. I've been doing this for 25 years. I mean, I've seen a lot of change. I've seen a lot of reasonings and communications on why we need this and how we need to structure this. And I mean, I've seen a lot of change. We've had curriculum coordinators, and we've always seemed to be behind in our curriculum. We've tried it with a superintendent, with a finance director, with curriculum background. We've tried a lot of things. Administratively, and RSU was supposed to save us money, but we've got additional deans of students. We've got a lot of administrators. I don't think it's really.
But it has saved us money.
Oh yes, our budget was over 22 million, and we're talking 5 years ago, and we are still
way over.
Yeah.
State average,
Right.
for course.
But we're not now, as you know.
And that's right.
We're significantly
That is right.
below.
We tried for many years to sustain a champagne taste on a beer pocketbook, is really what happened.
So
And we got rid of some classes. We did have languages. We chose to get rid of mandated or things that should have stayed. So now we're back trying to catch up with education stuff. I just think a lot of it's you're going to put in what you think you should put in. But I'm going to tell you, Mechanic Falls, we're going to push for some restructuring financially. I do think a lot of things need financial restructuring. As I said when we started this process, and I'm here for information only, my taxes in 2 years have gone up $450. And you're looking at another $200 for me. That's in 2 years. This will be the third year. And I think that's extremely high for bedroom communities. And I think if Poland didn't have Poland Spring Bottling here, it would be in the same boat as mine at Mechanic Falls. Unfortunately, we don't have any business.
Kathy, do you have a sense?
Well, we're going to meet again next week, so, I mean, we've tried to keep the budget down. John Hawley's done a pretty good job. But the bottom line is, we have like 800 and some odd thousand in our fund balance, and we cannot take any more money out of that.
We're two at the bottom.
So, in the next few years, we really need to be looking at what we're going to do as a town, and what we can live without, and what we can't. And, you know, I know the value of education, and, you know, I look at some of these things on here, you know, like world language. I mean, I travel a lot, and there are a lot of jobs out there that world language, in my opinion, should be at the top. These special ed positions, you know, I've worked with a lot of students. If you don't have these positions now, you're just going to pay for it somewhere down the line. So I get this whole budget and math. I mean, that's so important. So right at the moment, just taking this all in, you know, I think we have to make some tough decisions, and I don't have the answer at the moment.
Do you have any idea when you're thinking about just looking through this list? I know Leo said he felt like the $168,000 level would be something we may be able to sell. Questioned whether we could before. Do you have any amount in your mind that you think is a starting point for us? And like I said, I think we all know that these are essential items. I mean, it's pretty clear that, you know, when I don't know another school system that doesn't have guidance at an elementary level. I've never heard of a school not have a guidance counselor. There's not a school in the state that doesn't have a business manager. I've never heard of a school department having only one foreign language. They have 2 and 3. So I think we all agree that these are big priorities, and we're trying to, you know, kind of get a sense for what do we think the towns can support. It kind of comes back to the second goal of, you know, we know what 1 and 3 are. Our maintenance of effort is sustaining our programs. Our 3 is meeting the demands of or the promises of our strategic plan. The second one's the hard one. How do you do that and be economically or financially responsible to your towns? And it might help us if you had a sense of where you think that line is. It might help us all kind of say, well, here's what we think we could put forward.
Well, I certainly think the $290,000. While I support all these programs, the $290,000 probably isn't going to work. You know, you're probably going to have to keep it under the 200, under 200,000.
Mariella?
One thing I was thinking about is we still have some unknowns, and we're hoping we budgeted for a $130,000 increase in health insurance.
We'll know that next week, hopefully.
Okay. So one of my thoughts is that if we discussed that sort of make or break point of around the 50, which, you know, kind of, it's different for each town, but give or take that $50 per $100,000 increase. Isn't that what it would come out to?
Yes, that's the first priority item.
Give or take it. That's what the average is on priority 1, I think. If we discussed something like that and then found that, for instance, we came in with no increase in the health insurance, then maybe we could take some of those funds to put towards some of those other priority items. So that might be something that we say, okay, you know, the increase is not going to be anything over this dollar amount, but if we have a savings, then we might put that savings towards some of these other priority items.
And that's what we did last year, Mariella. Yeah. When we got additional revenue, we said, okay, we're going to put this amount towards more tax, reducing the tax burden for our communities, and then we're going to get in more for CIP and the extra bus, I think it was. It might have been, was it 1 bus?
Because those were the things that came up at our community meeting.
That would be a really easy way, knowing that our revenue is so much in doubt right now. Usually the governor's budget in the past has been pretty solid. You have a good, strong sense that the governor's budget's going to go through. Usually there's not a big push to put in more money into general purpose aid or to return the retirement burden back to the state. So we have so many unknowns that if the school department found out in a month or right around our town meeting time that we had $300,000 more dollars, we might be able to say we can get items 1 and 2 and then reduce the tax burden with the, you know, $200,000 of it go into additional programs that we have for priority, but $100,000 going back to the town burden. That would be easy for the school board to really kind of have a guideline that would help our decision-making process.
One of the things that Bernice suggested was that out of that first list that we pulled out the K-3 math. So I guess I would like to know how other people feel about that. Should we just look at 4-6 now and pull out that 30,000 out of that list? And we broke it up that way in case that was what the committee felt more comfortable with.
If the math changes, let's say every 5-6 years, by the time the kindergarten's getting to 6th grade, it's going to be all different.
Actually, we don't. We probably buy new curriculum every 10 plus years, so it's quite a long ways out. And what I would just advocate for, if people felt like there was a dollar amount, like 168,000 or 200,000, because I think as a district that is a pretty high. That makes our professional development more cohesive. So if you were telling us, no, you got to get it down to 140,000, then we'd go, okay, the math has to go. But if people think that $50 range, I would like to keep the math in, knowing that we have really worked hard to prioritize based on what we think is going to make the biggest impact on students, and that math impacts every child in the district, whereas like the forensics course, only would impact a smaller percent. Of course, that's a smaller item, so it doesn't make as much of a difference. But the curriculum work would certainly be more cohesive if we had all of it. But again, I'd be open to hearing what.
Jen and Tina, do you have? Where do you sit with this?
I think with the math, I think it would be best. It makes the most sense to do it all at once. And yeah, I don't think we can ask for anything more than probably the $50. So that kind of 168, 170,000 right now, depending on maybe how some other things shake out. I would love to see world language added back in, but I know that's a larger ticket item in the bottom two lists. But I think the first set of priorities is we need to do that.
And one of the things we could do is watch those numbers for insurance, and that could be the first thing that goes back up to the top priority list. If we get a $50,000, $100,000 savings, I would certainly say if this committee feels like that foreign language should be our next item up, that we could prioritize that. I know it's a big ticket item, but I think we would all agree with you that that's pretty high on the priority list of our community and also our administrative team.
And it's been on it for a while, and also as part of the high school accreditation team when they were here, that was a recommendation that came out of the accreditation. So, I mean, I would agree if I look at the next set that would be the priority, the world language. Tina, how are you feeling about
It's tough. I mean, because everything is just so expensive, and I get it. I mean, the reality is, people already have a hard time. So then, adding more, although great programs, I mean, it's just tough, and how do you divide all these out? We are here to make recommendations, so it's not just getting information. Like, we're making recommendations for the school board to move forward on this and to finalize what the budget will look like and bring to the community. So we value all of your input because, to bring this forward and see what are the priorities and what should we be focusing on. So I don't know. I think, I'd like to see us have a plan A and a plan B, to be honest with you. I would like this committee to make recommendations of what do we see as plan A, worst case scenario if this budget is as is presented. But then plan B, if we get the $130,000 back from the insurance like last year, because the insurance didn't go up, what would we want to recommend again to the board that should be a priority here? And I feel strongly like kids with math and science. Nationally, that's a big focus. We know that we are so behind in math and science. So, and I like to look and see direct impact to the students. So when I see things like curriculum and I see the teachers and the guidance counselor and special ed, I mean, those are things that directly impact the kids. And not that the others aren't important, but, I like to see that balance because, as others have mentioned, there's a lot of talk about other things with administrative cost, but this is direct impact to the kids. So I think this is something that kind of balances that. And I also want to add one other thing. I'll get off my soapbox. But we've talked about all these different changes and stuff. But I have to say, and I've only been on the board for 4 years, when I first came, oh my Lord, very different scenario. Very, very different. And, you know, and I just think we have a great leadership team, and I think the business manager, although is costly, it may end up saving us money in the long run. And in fact, I had a conversation with some neighbors from mine this weekend, and I was telling them about this. I didn't know how much this was going to cost, but I said, one of the things in the budget's a business manager. I know it's a lot because it's probably going to be with benefits around $80,000. But, you know, they don't know how to negotiate contracts and, you know, these things like for liability insurance and those kind of things.
Oh, they
don't
can
know.
do anything.
We are doing our best.
Yeah.
I mean, you're doing your best, don't get me wrong. But, I mean, it would just save time and probably dollars having somebody that knows how to negotiate these contracts, even for, you know, the heating oil and things like that. And the person said to me, they go, you know, that person would probably actually pay for themselves in many ways, you know, or pay part of their salary by just the savings that they can contribute. And if they can do grants, that's just a bonus as well. So anyway, so I think it's hard, but I would support at least one, but I would like to see us prioritize what the plan B would be as well.
So when you say one, are you
The top,
talking about
yeah.
the top one?
Yeah.
And then as a plan B, if we have some either
Look
get
at
health
what the
insurance or
priorities.
additional subsidy, what would be the priorities underneath that?
Because if I look at these, and I appreciate what you all have, how you've itemized these out here, but and listed them, but there are some things that I might say, wow, this might be more of a priority, and then this might kind of move up on the list, you know,
And-
than some of the other.
And Tina, if you want to ask questions about why something's a priority, that's why we
Right.
put that forward, because the administrative team, Mary and Kim and I, have reasons why they went 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
So if you're saying to us, why is foreign language in the second tier and not the first tier compared to the math or something like that, we'd be glad to talk a little bit about our thinking on that. The same with like the science. We said, you know, the science standards have not actually been adopted by the state yet. We're not behind the 8 ball, but we are with the math. So initially we were thinking, oh, math is going to be, the science is going to be the first, you know, goal. And then we said, you know, that doesn't make sense. The math has to be. That's 2012, those were adopted. And so as we talked about what the needs were going forward, what the laws require, and all of those things, we went down through and kind of prioritized into 1, 2, and 3 with a lot of thoughtful consideration in there, and that's why the number helps us. You know, we or questions, and you may convince us otherwise just by the kind of questions you're asking. But the foreign languages certainly was a struggle to go, okay, is foreign language staying in that first one? It's such a big ticket item, and we felt like the core academic subjects, math and science, had to take precedence over the foreign language. And so that was one part of that process, was looking at how much that tier 1 was and where we had to draw the line. We were thinking the same thing, is that first tier had to be a reasonable number, or we weren't going to sell it to our communities.
And the other thing is that, and I don't know if I want to bring this up, but for instance, the math curriculum, that's a one-time cost. We wouldn't have it next year. We add in the world language teacher, then we need to be prepared to have that continue on in future budgets. So some of these things are one-time costs. The staff positions would be permanent additions to the budget.
And the other challenge we have with the world language that came into consideration last year is we have no space.
Right.
And so if we have a foreign language teacher, they're going to be on a cart and they're going to roam around the building trying to find places to work with students. They will be on a cart and they will roll their cart into a classroom and work with a particular group of children, and then they'll have to go to another space to work with a different group of children. We think, again, last year we decided to put it on hold because we're trying to deal with the space issue, but we also realized we can't keep putting it on hold, and that's why it ended up back on our priority list. in large part because of the proficiency-based diploma requirements. Again, we have a waiver, so it's buying us a little bit of time when they have to be proficient, but that waiver is going to come and go really quickly, and we need to start preparing our students as early as we can.
As far as this choral risers, can't the choral group have a fundraiser to raise money for the choral riser instead of having coming out of the tax money? You know, people, if they know there's a goal, I think they will support it more, but when you see it coming out of your taxes,
Yeah.
and it's a tax bill.
Yeah, so certainly if we cut it here, we're going to try to find a way to fund it, whether it goes to the boosters, whether we are looking for funds from, other places, student activity accounts. I don't know where that would be, but we would certainly be shifting money. Carrie even said, if she has some money in the budget for furniture, I think it is, and she said, if we really couldn't get this in the priority list, she might have to see the numbers next year and decide if that has to take precedence over new desks and chairs for a particular classroom. Am I representing that correct, Carrie? So it's a pretty high priority, and yes, if we said we can't get the choral risers, we would try to find other ways to either raise the money or come up with it, because how many kids did you say in the chorus?
62.
62, so. We're very proud of that, and they're amazing, and we have an amazing teacher in that program. So, again, knowing what you are prioritizing or thinking what's a priority and what's not will help us make those decisions going forward.
And I like to think continued sustainability as well.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, this is this year,
Yeah.
but next year we're going to be in the same, in another same position. You're saying they're recommending putting more general public aid in and all
Yes.
this, but I mean, if they put it in this year, they could take it back next year. So I mean, we need to look at sustainability with these things that we add in here. I mean, where we're saying we need to catch up on curriculum and we need to meet our standards. Those are our priorities.
Yes.
And in some things that really disappoint me when we say we look at this priority, and I know everybody likes raises, but priorities sometimes are getting ourselves back up to standard before we can fulfill some of the other obligations. And I know they're contractual, but we need to think of what's mandated.
Yeah.
That is our priority. But then another thing that makes me sad is we got $54,000 sitting out here that the general public who loves what we do for education won't pay for lunch. And that is a bill. That
Yeah.
could be a position. That's sad. And I will be bringing that up at all the public meetings.
Yeah, that's
If
great.
we don't want to put something in the newspaper, and we don't really want to collect bills, I have no problem standing up in public and saying, shame on you. I think that is a travesty when it's $54,000. There's your risers, there's almost half of tier one.
So I just
Sad.
So I just want to remind you that our community members here have all said what hard times community
I
members
know,
are having,
right.
and so that's part of this whole difficult time is that people are having a difficulty paying their bills, and it's not just their school lunch bill, as you said, it's other bills, it's your property taxes and
But they're still not
things.
going to be able to pay their taxes.
Yeah.
We're asking for
Right.
$50 $100,000, which is still
Yeah.
$100 a year on most people, but they can't pay for lunch. Okay, we're in a rock and a hard place, and for me, if we're looking for financial restructuring at a town level, because we're going to tell our people, no, we want to hold your salaries this, and we're going to have to reevaluate some of our services, it's not right for open pocketbooks for other items. And I think the curriculum-based things should be the priority, because we have to meet our mandates.
So what I'm hearing from the group, and everybody has spoken, is that that somewhere around that $50 range, which is the priority one list, and that people feel pretty strongly about the world language teacher. But in order to look beyond that first one, we would need to have some additional subsidy or some changes in our insurance in order to fund that. Is that correct? Is there somebody that really disagrees with that? Or do people feel comfortable with that's what we can suggest to the RSU 16 school board?
see a lot of heads nodding, so that's
I
good.
don't see anybody say that's not
I'm
something.
looking at, your maintenance of effort budget and what our town budget is going on, we're over the 50 already.
Yeah.
And I think it needs to be collectively. If you're gonna look for 25 and the town wants 25, that's only fair. I can't give you 50 and say to the town, nope, you can have 20.
So is Bonnie the only one that is at that place? I look like the rest of you are nodding that they could support the 50.
No, I was not supporting the 50.
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
looking at
Bernice
the,
did, yeah.
the first page here, and I had the wrong page, you know.
I would say our municipalities'
Yeah.
biggest gripe is, we always say no to them if the school gets what they want. And this year, I'm gonna say, if you want, if they're giving up, where, mine's going up 25 for them, I'll give you the same 25. I'm not gonna give you 50 in my town.
I'm hearing from other people that they're comfortable with that. So, where do we want to go with that?
I think we can present all of this to the board and, present all of the opinions that are here to the full board, and then we'll have their input as well, and it will be up to the board what to bring forth.
Because
Can I just...
even 50 is a sizable increase.
Yes.
I will tell you that we are having a disagreement between the budget committee and the selectmen, and we are going to town meeting. It's a minor amount. It's like 6 or 7 cents.
No, no.
But I mean, that's what we talk about at the municipal level, and so we also know that proportionately your budget is a bigger budget, but it does. I think I would like to echo the discussion that is in any of the smaller towns that we have to go without, and but it's reality. But we gotta kind of move on.
And one of the things that I think is important for us to be thinking about is that, or remembering, is that this is worst case scenario, and we can assure you that if we get additional subsidy, we will make sure that the town feels the benefit of that as well. We certainly want to have the support of the town because, like I said, these items, when we look down through them, many of them are dictated by state law and regulations, and when we are really out of alignment with what everybody else is doing, it's a worry. And I'm going to go back to the salaries again. The reason I shared the sheet with you is because it shows our salaries aren't even in alignment with what's average. And so we are an average district where have 40% in the 40s usually for free and reduced lunch. That's pretty typical. There are much more affluent communities out there, and there are some that are much worse off than 40% at Minot or 50. Mechanic Falls is our highest within around the 52, 53 range. So, thinking about that, seeing that our insurance contributions are significantly less from the state. That's important for our communities to know, and not that we are out there saying it's unfair we're getting these great raises, but to share the actual truth is that we are significantly below the state average in what we're paying our teachers. And that's including a good raise this year, which costs us $310,000, but it's still not changing that gap, and we need to at least keep our teachers. I hired 42 teachers in just 2 years, so I want to make sure our communities know that to keep our teachers, we have to at least be providing a reasonable salary and a reasonable benefit package. So I didn't want to let that discussion end without at least reminding people of the reality, and I will be glad to post that document on our website so our community members can actually look at it and see the comparison as well.
Well, it was in the paper just today that the city of Auburn, they're asking their school to
Yeah.
take on
So,
$1 million.
I mean,
it's not just the small town, it's,
Right.
it's everybody.
But you have to look at what they've done over the past couple of years, because I think they had, for the last couple of years, they had some pretty big increases.
Yes, but I mean, it's
So
still-
it all
once
kind
you-
of
once you hire somebody,
averages
it's
out.
hard to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And it's hard to cut programs. And,
One thing I would be curious about is, and this might be something for Wendy and Carol, is how many of our staff members live in our 3 towns? Because another thing to remember is that these folks that are getting the raises, which aren't huge, are much less than what teachers got 10, 20 years ago. A lot of them live in our 3 towns. So, and these are our community members.
Yeah.
And these are the programs that allow our kids to go out there and get good paying jobs.
Right.
So,
And when we formed our RSU, we chose to stay the tri-town smaller
Yeah.
unit.
yeah.
Okay, which we're never going to be the big unit. We did not form with somebody that was bigger, that had bigger pocketbooks. So, I mean, we still collectively are a very small community and will never be any bigger than really what we are. So we do have to take that into consideration, that we're not a big city. We're not merged with a lot of larger towns.
Yeah.
We chose to stay our small group.
And that's actually one of the reasons our budget is higher than some other budgets, is because, and I had somebody ask me, how come our budget is at this amount? And it was another superintendent, and he said, do you have some small schools? And I said, yes. When you have a school the size of Minot Consolidated and Elm Street, the cost goes up because you lose some efficiencies to a big school where you can add a teacher, and it brings down the class size by just a few. But when you only have 2 teachers, you're really stuck when you're trying to, you got 27 kids, you don't want a class of 27, but if you add a teacher, you have 13. And that is one of our challenges with small schools, is we value them. We keep a librarian at Minot Consolidated, even though EPS wouldn't support a full-time librarian there, because we believe the library should be open full-time. Same with nurses in those 2 schools. EPS doesn't support full day nursing staff for those 2 small schools, but our communities certainly do. And so, again, you have some challenges with increased costs because of less efficiencies with small schools, but we value the aspects of our small community.
The employees probably do too.
Yes,
because,
certainly.
People that live in town, if you had to put them in the middle of a big city, it's going to be culture
Right.
shock.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are benefits to being here, other than their salary.
Right.
There are people make their life's choices where they're comfortable.
Tina, did you have something? You had your hand up a few minutes ago.
No, I don't.
So, I think I'm clear on the recommendation that we will bring forward and also share the opinions in terms of Minot and Mechanic Falls. But I certainly want to thank everybody for their time. This has been a lot of time, and not just people's time, but they're willing to participate. You haven't just been here. Everybody has participated, and I feel like we've had some really deep discussions, and that those discussions will certainly help and will guide us as we make those decisions around budget, which was our goal. So thank you, appreciate it.
And as we have updates, if funding shifts at all, I will send notifications out to this committee and let you know of those changes, so that you don't have to wait until the town meeting to hear them or wonder how that's turned out.
I wonder too, would it be helpful for the people on the budget committee to get information about what's going to be
This one
presented
is yours.
at those meetings ahead of time? Because I know you usually share it with the school board, but I think the folks that are part of this budget committee, it might help them to have that information ahead of time as well.
So the challenge with that is sometimes it's like these sheets. If you're not here to explain it, it can be confusing. So what I would hope is everybody on the budget committee would be at the meeting, at least in their own town. I know, Bernice, I remember you being there last year. I know Bonnie was at Mechanic Falls. Not sure if Leo was there last year, but yeah, if you guys, and Kathy, if you will check the dates and you can make it work, that's great. If you can't make the one in your town, they're all the same in each one, so you could go to a different town if you missed the one in yours. Yeah.
And we tried to do the 3 nights in a row because we wanted to give everybody exactly the same bit of information, and sometimes that has changed within a week. So.
Yeah.
So, Tina, on the April 13th, you will have your final proposed budget, or you'll be setting your final proposed budget on the 13th at your regular school board.
Yeah, this will, either Mary or I will present what the,
What you're present,
the,
what you're gonna bring to the public.
yeah, it'll be very similar to what I just did today.
So I may come to that one.
Yeah.
And it will be the budget that we're going to propose at the informational meetings, which pending whatever feedback we have from those. Last year, it did change a couple of things a little bit.
Because then we'll have to meet again to do the actual
final one.
Yes.
budget and warrants and all that.
Yeah.
Good.